the table. If you don't have one, Cody will give you one. So
Got it.
bring them around. So thank you, sir. We're going to go through several different things in the agenda, and then we'll have some time for questions throughout and conversations. And so, again, thanks for being here today, but I'd like to just start with a word of prayer. Gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for this community and this church of Holy Comforter. We ask that you continue to lead and guide us, that we may be about your work and your business, loving you, loving all those that we meet, and loving one another. Please guide our meeting. Help us to understand one another well. Help us to hear one another well, and help us to speak clearly with each other. Lord, we ask that you unite us together so that we may work together in unity towards what you've given us to do. Be with us now. Send your Spirit to watch over us. We pray all these things through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. I'd like to start with is kind of just going over a few things from the parochial report. So every Episcopal church each year in January kind of fills out parochial report, looks back over the past year, a lot of different numbers. The parochial report has grown here recently. There's a lot of narrative questions now. We're not going to go through every aspect of the parochial report. We're still firming up a couple of little details of that in this coming week, but we do have a few things to share with you. You can look there on your handout, just a few things to kind of go over with you. We have 2021, some numbers there, and 2022 numbers. You can see average Sunday attendance 21 was 54, so it doubled to 2022. So that probably had a lot to do with COVID and the number of services being held and different things like that. Is probably why the dramatic difference. You can see our active baptized members. So this number, it's probably actually not this high. So our records are kind of showing that we got a lot of people being active that were probably not active. So one of the goals this year will be to look through these numbers and make sure that we're accurately reflecting those that are active and involved in the church currently. So 2023 program, I'm expecting that number to change significantly. You can see communicants in good standing. Communicants defined in the canons and for the parochial report are people that received communion 3 times during the previous year. And then good standing means that you are active and participating in the life of the church, so you're showing up for worship, you're serving in ministry, and you're giving money to support the common life of the church. And then you can see our baptisms, confirmations, and receptions there. Does anyone have any questions there about any of those numbers in the parochial report or any other questions kind of about just where we're standing from 2022 coming into 2023? All right, well, wonderful. Well, what I'm going to do now is call up, first. We're going to talk about vestry. So we've had some outgoing vestry members. So Olga Garcia and Lindsay Beck. I don't see. Oh, there's Lindsay. Lindsay's here. Lindsay and Olga here. And want to thank y'all for your service and your activity on the vestry over this past year. Both of these ladies have exhibited a love for this church community and their work and service, and they've both been quick to offer their time and energy. And so we very much appreciate your service. Gwen, do we have some cards for these ladies? Okay, we will have some cards for you, and we also have an email gift coming to you, so be looking in your box, that will be coming to you, but we very much appreciate what y'all done for the church. So. And with Lindsay and Olga rolling off the vestry after today, we have 2 new members coming aboard that y'all elected here in the fall. We have Sylvia Holship and Gwendolyn Wright. And Sylvia and Gwendolyn, would y'all come forward here, please? We got fun gifts for you. Maybe not as fun. We have a key and a name tag, so we put you to work. So thanks, Sylvia. Gwendolyn, here's yours. Thank you. Yeah, so y'all remember, we also elected Richard Poole in the fall as a vestry member. He was filling a term that was not finished be elected for 3 years, so he's just continuing to work, and we're so glad that he's willing to put himself forward. So along with Gwendolyn and Sylvia and Richard, your other current vestry members are Rick Harris, who's right here. We have Don Esposito right there. We have Gwen Aldridge, who's over here. Teresa San Miguel's over here, and then Sean Henners is right here also. And then our other vestry member is Walter Foyt, and Walter has been serving as the senior warden here at Holy Comforter for this past year. And when I got here, I heard lots of good things about the job that Walter had been doing here as senior warden during the transition, and just heard lots of wonderful good things about his faithful service. And so, as a reward for his faithful service, I've asked him to serve as senior warden again for this year. And Walter has agreed. He's agreed. So Walter will be the senior warden for 2023 as well. As the vestry is getting organized for this year, we have a couple of positions on the vestry that can be filled by any church member. One is treasurer, and another one is clerk. And the clerk basically keeps the minutes and the paperwork for the vestry and keeps us organized. Sean is currently kind of fulfilling that role, but she would be happy if there would be someone else in the church who might be interested in fulfilling that role. And so, if you feel led to do that, you can talk to a vestry member, you can talk to me, and then the vestry can meet and talk and discuss about maybe you coming and fulfilling that role. And then the other role is treasurer, which helps keep track of our finances and overview of the church and that nature. Chris LeGrand has currently been doing that job, and she's happy to continue to do it, but would also be interested to see if there might be someone else in the church who might be willing to do that role as well. So if you have some interest in maybe serving as treasurer, again, talk to me or talk to a vestry member, and we can see about putting you into that role. A few other notes just on vestries. For the year, the vestry is going to meet on the third Wednesday of each month in general at 7 p.m., so you can kind of make note of that vestry meets every third Wednesday at 7. On the website, there's a vestry section, and the recent minutes and financial reports from vestry meetings are posted there on the website. So it's a good way for you to check that out and read and kind of keep up with what's happening in the vestry, the decisions the vestry's making, and the things they're considering. And then another thing that's going to be kind of going on the vestry and with the church this year is we're going to start vestry care groups. And the vestry has agreed that what we're going to do is divide the households in the church up into 9 different groups. We have 9 vestry members, and each vestry member will be assigned a group of households, and they're going to kind of keep up with those households, and so they're going to call and check on you a few times each year. So they're going to call and just kind of see how you're doing, what's going on, see if you have any concerns about anything going to church. From time to time, they might have a question to ask you about and get your opinion on matters. This is just a way for them to stay connected with you, for you to stay connected with the vestry, and so that as the vestry meets and is thinking about decisions and making decisions, they kind of have more information as they kind of go about that work. So there will be more information coming out here in the coming weeks and months as we kind of get all organized. Faith, our staff member, is currently working on divvying up everybody into 9 groups so that we have that. And then we'll be making more announcements as the vestry gets ready to call you, so you can be on the lookout for that. Moving on, I'm going to call up Walter now. He's going to come forward and share a little bit about the finances and our budget situation. So Walter, come on forward.
All right, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So I'm going to go through the 2022 results compared to... It's hard to hear you? Or hard to hear me? Is this better? Okay. I'm going to go through the 2022 results and then also go through the 2023 budget, just to kind of give everyone an idea of where we finished and where we look to be going in 2023. So if you turn over, I'm going to skip this first page titled Year-to-Date Quarterly, because that's just a summary, and move over to the page titled Statement of Financial Position. And the only thing I really want to highlight on here is towards the top you'll see our bank accounts. We have 2 there. One's called Major Maintenance and the other one's General Funds. And I just want to highlight that for Major Maintenance it's things like unexpected repairs, if the AC goes out or something like that, or something that we're not expecting. We have $43,000 sitting aside to cover those costs. And then we also have a General Fund, which is $75,000, which can be used in general if we don't have enough during the particular month to cover all of our expenses. We can use that general fund. One thing I want to note is this past year, you'll notice that general fund went from 126,000 to 75,000. So we did have to dip into that a bit during 2022. But I also, if you scroll down a little bit, there's an account called investment. This is some stocks and things of that nature that we've been gifted over the years. So we do have that also sitting there as potential additional funds if we were to ever need them to sell. And for those that follow the market, you probably know now is not the best time to sell, but we do have those available to potentially sell if needed. Moving to the next page, the one titled Statement of Activity, Actual versus Budget. So I'm going to focus on the year-to-date columns here. So I think overall for this year we had a pretty good year compared to budget. Our revenue came in higher than expected. We had budgeted about $328K and we came in at about $351K. So that was good. We had a lot of, we had more additional plate offerings and restricted donations than expected. So we had a pretty good year compared to the budget from a revenue perspective. Our expenses were just a shade under what we had budgeted. There wasn't really anything overall that really led to that. It was just a few things here and there that caused us to just be a little bit under from an expense standpoint. So if you look at towards the bottom, there's a line called net operating revenue. We were basically $30,000 under overall for the year. And so that's a big reason why our cash balance went down. The actual net revenue at the bottom is $55,000 under. However, a big chunk of that, and apologies, it seems like I got a little static on this, but a big chunk of that is the unrealized loss. And that is our stocks that we have not sold. And so it was a loss, but it's not a loss that cost us anything because just the market went down this past year. So it caused us to have a bigger net loss than otherwise would have been the case. Moving to the next page. I need to be careful not to move at all. Moving to the next page. I think it's on backwards. You'll need to flip it around and it should be revenue at the very top. So right now we're basically budgeting a revenue perspective to be about where we were last year. Hopefully we'll end up coming in better than we were last year from a revenue perspective, but right now, based on the pledges that we've had come in, we're forecasting revenue to be around where it was in 2022. However, our expenses are going up, and so before I dig into the expenses, if you turn to the second page, at the very bottom of that second page, you'll see right now our net operating loss for 2023 is forecasted to be about $79,000. As you may remember, we had $75,000 sitting in our general fund. So basically, where we're sitting right now from a 2023 budget perspective, we would use pretty much all of that cash. Like I mentioned also, we do have those stocks. If we had to sell them, we could, but it's important to note that we are right now sitting in a loss position forecasted of about $79,000. Just going through the expenses in a little bit more detail. The first section there is clergy, and last year we had a interim part-time clergy member, and now we have a full-time priest, and so obviously having someone full-time is going to be more expensive than a part-time. I don't know who all knew, but Father Darrell was he was not working a full-time schedule, he was only part-time, and so he was paid part-time. So the clergy expenses are higher than they were in the past, and we actually did cut some expenses in a few areas. One that I want to specifically point out to you is actually on the second page, because I think it's the one you'll most notice. If you go down to the line labeled 6255 music, you'll see our actual expenses for 2022 was $10,600, and this year it's $3,500. And this is because something that some of you that go to the 10 a.m. service, you'll notice is that we will no longer have a choir. beginning in February. We just aren't able to keep that going currently, beginning in February. Ashley will still be there playing the piano, so no impact to the full-time staff, but it will, obviously it means we won't have a choir anymore. So anyone who's interested in singing,
it's not that we're not going to have a choir, we're not going to have paid choir.
right, and that's what I was about to say. So what I was about to say is anyone who's interested in singing, just let us know, because we will have a ministry that offers you an opportunity to sing with Ashley. So, but we will not have, thank you, Rick, we will not have anyone that we're paying anymore. So it will now be a ministry that's offered as part of the church. So if you're interested, just let us know. And then other than that, we made a few cuts here and there to the expenditures, but nothing that I think will be as noticeable as that one. So just overall, just the children's ministries, the adult education, things like that. We made small cuts to the budget, but the amounts that we have in the budget are pretty much in line with what we spent in 2022. We just won't be able to increase the spending from those 2022 amounts. So, basically, so that's where we're at. And that's how we got to the 79K net loss. Any questions, I guess, from the group on the budget? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Walter. I don't know.
Do we need to lose it?
Is it better with the static or without the static?
Without, all right. All right, we'll try it this way. Thanks, Walter, for presenting on the finance and the budget. Like I said, in the vestry section of the website, the monthly financial reports, as the vestry reviews those, we'll be posting those so you can keep up to date with what's going on. If you ever have any questions about money or the budget, talk to vestry members about those questions and issues as the things come up. I'd like to share and talk with y'all a little bit now. First of all, it's good to be here with you. So I've been here a little bit over 4 months now. In some ways it feels like it's been a long time. We've been together and doing a lot of stuff. There's been a lot happening over those 4 months. Right, we celebrated 50 years together, which was wonderful. And but in other ways, it's been a relatively short time. And I think every week I'm learning new things about this place and how you work and things that are important to you. And so I still feel like I'm still getting settled in a lot of ways as well. But overall, I'm glad to be here with you and to be among you and appreciate the opportunity to be here and minister and serve with you. One of the things that came up when I was going through the search process with y'all and met with the search committee and was going through that process is one of the things I shared with them is that I'm comfortable and enjoy change. I like when things are changing. I like to be in dynamic situations. I get restless if there's not something to evaluate, to work on, to improve. And so as I was thinking about where my future ministry was going to be, I was looking for a situation to go to a congregation that was also open to change and maybe doing some new things and some different things. And also kind of recognize that maybe they needed to do some new things and go about and engage in some changes. And so, as I was going through the process with the search committee, I sensed that that's where Holy Comforter was and the situation they were in. And I think that's accurate so far in my time being here among you. And so, as I think about this coming year for 2023, there's going to be two big areas of change that I'm going to be focusing on and I'm going to ask you to focus on with me. And I think these are two things that we need to change in order for us to be who God wants us to be and for us to flourish as a church here at Holy Comforter. And these changes are really, really big changes. This is like big picture things that we're going to be talking about this morning. And really, each of these changes is really made up of like about 1,001 different smaller changes and decisions that have to be made. And I'll make some of those changes and decisions. The vestry will make some of those changes and decisions. And then all of you in your different ministries will make some of those changes and decisions, and all of you will make them just as individual members here at this church. So it's really going to be us operating on all these different levels in order to kind of be successful as we think about this. We're only going to be able to kind of be successful if we all kind of do this together and do this jointly. And the last thing I want to say before I get into talking about the changes in more detail is that some of the things I'm going to be saying this morning may be uncomfortable for us to hear, but I'm bringing them up because it's worthwhile for us to think about them and to just deal with the situation and kind of the truth of the matter of what's before us. We kind of have to be honest with ourselves and who we are and what's currently going on in order for us to appropriately move forward and evaluate things. And so we're going to name this truth together, and we're going to respond to it together, and we're all going to work together to make these changes that are needed so that we can be who God wants us to be. So the first area of change that I want us to focus on for 2023 is unity. Here's what's working about unity here at Holy Comfort, and this does not need to change, all right? So we're starting where it doesn't need to change. Is that for the most part, the people of this church love and care for one another. And they welcome in new people that come into this community. And that's a good thing, right? That's a good sign of unity. The fact that you're all together, that's what I noticed when I showed up here. You love each other, you care for each other, you want what's best for one another. And that's all good, and that helps us be unified together, that kind of dynamic that's going on. So keep up that good work, right? Don't change that part, okay? I'm not asking you to change that. Keep that. What does need to change from what I've observed so far and had conversations about is that here at Holy Comfort, I think we are not unified in sense of a purpose, of a common purpose, and a common identity together. I see this kind of in our ministries and various groups. For the most part, each ministry at this church, I feel like exists kind of in a silo and kind of operates independently a lot from the other ministries. There is in a sense that this is how this ministry fits in with all the other ministries and how we're all kind of connect together working towards a common goal. There isn't always a clear understanding how someone joins a particular ministry or gets involved in a ministry. There isn't always clarity about what ministry is responsible for what aspect of our life here together. And so there's just this lack of clarity around how decisions are made and who's responsible for making them, and then why we're making these decisions. What's our kind of our common guiding principles together. I would say we don't have an operational mission statement. We have a mission statement that's on paper, right? It exists on paper, but it isn't operational. And what I mean by operational, right? Nobody refers to it. Nobody uses it to make their decisions. Ministries aren't thinking about, well, we're going to do this because this is our mission as Holy Comfort, and this is what we should be doing. A lot of people probably don't even know it, right? I won't ask anybody who knows it or not know it, but if I actually say, what's the mission statement of Holy Comfort? I think a lot of y'all would struggle, maybe remember some words here or some pieces there, but would struggle to name what that is. And again, when I'm talking with people, I don't hear people referencing, this is why we're doing this, because this is our mission here at Holy Comfort. And so, when an organization, when they lack a clear understanding of who they are and what they are doing, you end up with a lot of different rationales for why we make decisions and why we do different things. And everybody's just kind of left to find their own rationale, right? Everybody just finds their own reason for why they want to do something or why a particular ministry should exist or not exist. And this leads to us being disjointed and disunified. And so, right, one person has this reason, another person has this reason for why Holy Comfort exists, and we're just not all on the same page. And so, to be unified, we all need to have the same reason, the same rationale for why we exist as a church and what we're about. And so what are we going to do about this unity? And there's kind of two things that we're going to be working on this year to combat this dynamic of disunity and become more unified over the coming year. One is our narrative. And when we think about narrative, we say, what is the language we use to talk about who we are? What's our story that we're going to tell about Holy Comforter that describes who we are and what we do? And that should be the same for all of us, right? If anybody who's not a part of this church came and asked, well, what's Holy Comforter about? Who is Holy Comforter? We should all be able to give the exact same answer. We should also kind of reference the same narrative, tell the same story about who we are and why we do things. And so we're going to come up with this common narrative. We're going to share this common narrative. We're going to talk about it again and again and again. You're going to hear it 1,000 times. You're going to see it 1,000 times. It's going to be said. It's going to be spoken. It's going to be referenced to. You're going to be having dreams about it, right? You're all going to know this, all right? It's going to become a part of who we are. It's going to be in your heart, and so that we can all kind of be on that same page, have that same common language, and say the same story about who we are and what we're about. And then the second area of focus on for us as far as unity for the year is going to be our organizational response. We're going to get clear about what our ministries are. We're going to get clear about how they function, how communication happens across the church, how decisions are made. Right? All of these are things that are going to need to be improved on and we're going to work on. One of the organizational pieces that we're going to do that's going to help with communication is what I mentioned earlier with the vestry. The vestry is going to do these vestry care groups I mentioned earlier. This is going to be a way for people to give feedback to the vestry about things we're going to help them feel connected to what's going on, know what the vestry is currently working on, and what's being prioritized in the church. And so that's just one example. There's going to be a lot of other things we are going to do as we kind of think about how we work and do life together and organizationally. So this means there's going to be new ministries that are created. A lot of existing ministries are going to have to be modified or changed slightly about and how they kind of go about and do things. But I think as we kind of embark on this journey of doing these organizational changes, it's going to help us be more unified together, be more on the same page. We're all going to understand, like, oh yeah, I know about that ministry over there, and this is what they do, and they take care of that for the church. I don't need to do that, because there's people over there that are doing that. And we can kind of trust one another with the work as we all share in the common burden to do these things together. So we're really, as we think about unity, we're going to answer the question of why we do things and how we do things. If you that can be the little tidbit you remember. So that's what we're going to be working on. Why we do things and how we do things. Before I go on a little bit more, are there any questions about any of that, what I just said, about our focus on unity for the year? Or comments? Scott?
So normally whenever you kind of come up with a new statement, there's a visioning, and I know we haven't had a visioning in, I don't remember how long. Is that what you were referencing? We'll have a visioning, or is this just going to be a vestry and leadership kind of coming up with something?
At this point, it's probably going to be the vestry and the leadership kind of coming up with it. And the main driver of that is the time we have, which is going to get into my next thing that we have to talk about. But to answer that question succinctly at this point, it's going to be mainly the vestry and the leadership that comes up with that at this point. We're meeting here, the vestry is having a retreat here in a few weeks. That's going to be one of the items that's on our discussion and our agenda for it. So thanks for that question. Any other questions? All right, well, let's move on. Told you, two big areas of change, two big things we're going to be focusing on for this year. The second one is around our giving. That's where we need to focus for this coming year. When I got here and I look at kind of the present expectations of this church, in terms of what kind of staff this church expects us to have, what kind of property and buildings this church expects to have, what kind of ministries this church expects to be happening. When I looked at those expectations, to run that kind of church with that kind of property with that kind of staff is about a $600,000 a year budget. That's kind of the expectations that this church has been kind of put out there. Now, this church has not been operating with that kind of budget for many, many years, and that's caused impacts and hardships. So when I talk about $600,000, I'm not talking about like, oh, we need that money so we can hire new staff or we can start new ministries or build new buildings. This is all for like existing things. It's kind of that's the price tag for the expectation to do what we have kind of laid out and said, this is who we want to be, this is what we want to do, this is the kind of ministry we want to engage in, this is the kind of staff we want to have, and this is the kind of property we want to have. Right, if we had a $600,000 budget, we'd appropriately be able to compensate our staff. We underpay our staff. Right, we ask them for the amount of work we ask them to do and the quality of work we expect out of them. We're not paying them what we should be paying them. When we think about having $600,000, it allows us to appropriately care for our buildings and our grounds. Right, we have a ton of deferred maintenance here. Like it should be about $100,000 to $120,000 a year just on fixing buildings. Every year, stuff breaks, stuff wears out. It's just costs a lot of money to have these three buildings and keep them functioning and operational. So it also allows us to appropriately fund our ministries, right? A lot of our ministries are operating with budgets of like $1,000 or $2,000, and it's really hard to do very much And there's still expectations that a lot would happen with that amount of money. It just doesn't go very far. So $600,000 can seem like a lot of money. It can seem like a lot of money. But if we have 120 households that are pledging $5,000 each, on average, that gets us to $600,000. 120 households with an average pledge of $500,000. Doesn't mean that every household gets $500,000. I mean, not $500,000. If you want to, you can. But, that's right. That means on average, across 120 households, the average giving would come out to $5,000. That means some might give $10,000, some would give $1,000, but in average, across 120 households, $5,000 gets us to that $600,000 number. Currently at this church, we have 130 active households. So we have plenty of households. So the problem here is not we don't have enough people here in this congregation. If you want to look at there on your agenda page, there's a little graph there at the bottom there called average pledge. The orange line there, the top line, that's the average diocesan pledge across the Diocese of Texas. That's all the households and all the churches all across when the diocese takes all those numbers and adds them up, that's the average pledge going back to 2013. So the last numbers that we have for that is 2021. 22 numbers are being turned in right now, and those will be reported out here in the next month or two, and then 2023 numbers won't come out from the diocese till another year from now. But in 2021, the average diocesan pledge was $5,311.14. So if we're able to get to close to the diocesan average, like I said, 5,000. If we have 120 households that are averaging $5,000, then we have a budget, we have revenue of $600,000, which gets us enough to appropriately fund our life as a church together. So what we're looking at here is not insurmountable for us to do together. But we do have to kind of look at it and think about it and re-look at how we go about doing our giving and how we think about our giving. So there are two kind of big problems. First off, we have undergiving, right? Our average pledge here at Holy Comfort for this year is $4,300. So, which the diocesan average for this year is probably going to be higher than $5,300. So, but even basing it on 2021 numbers, we're $1,000 under in average. The other thing is we have under participation. As I said, we have 130 active households, and we have 69 pledgers for this year. So we have a lot of opportunities to get everyone involved. And so the reason I think for some of our undergiving, and I think some of it comes back to our unity question, right? People don't really feel connected and a part here, and so they're not sure about why they should give or how to give here. I think some of its issue is a lack of knowledge on exactly how much it actually costs to run a church and how much what's necessary to actually make things happen and pay the electric bill and just pay staff and all of those costs that are associated with that. And then I think there are a lot of individual reasons why that people have chosen not to give. And all of those will have to be kind of addressed on an individual basis. But I'm hopeful that we can face these challenges ahead for us. I think we can undergo this transformation. We can engage in these changes. We can become more unified together. We can uplift our giving and give more. This is all within our capabilities here at Holy Comfort, right? We're not asking us to climb Mount Everest here to do something that's well beyond our reach for kind of who we are as a congregation and who we have here currently with us. This is very doable. And I'm hopeful for it, right? I'm hopeful that we can do this. Right? If I didn't think we could do this, I wouldn't be putting it out there for you. But this is our goal. That $600,000 number is the number we should have in mind that we should be trying to get to over the course of this year, so that when we come around to this in 2024 and we're having our annual meeting and Walter or whoever is presenting about the budget, that's the kind of revenue number that we're looking at, because then we're talking about appropriately running the church as we expect it to do. Kind of where we are with our current financial situation. This goes back a little bit about Scott's question about time and things like that. Like if we're not able to get there over this course of the year, then there's going to be pretty dramatic changes that are going to have to happen. We're going to have to lower our expectations of what we want as a church. And that means firing staff or demolishing buildings and closing down ministries. right? Those are the things that have to happen in order to bring the expenses in line with the revenue. I don't think anybody wants any of that to happen. I don't want that to happen. I don't think anybody here wants that to happen. But if there's no money to pay for the things, then at some point we have to be honest with where we are and say, this is not what we're going to do, and let those things go, whatever those might be. So there will be some difficult conversations if we get to that place. But like I said, I'm hopeful that over the course of this year that we can kind of rethink about our giving, our relationship with Holy Comforter, encourage all of us one another to not only increase what we're currently giving, but also encourage everybody to participate. So that'll be one of the goals this year, is to get everyone involved in giving for the sake of the church. Any questions or thoughts about anything that I just said or laid out? Yes, sir.
I'm curious, I know that we have the YouTube, and I would feel that the average person that does not grace that building over there doesn't have the same amount of feeling of involvement. Is there some way or another, I know that, you know, cutting that out probably wouldn't be a good deal at this time because we're still recovering, but, you know, like what Walter said, Carol and I, we live on our investments. We save savings while working.
Right, right.
And my last year and a half has been disaster in the market. Now, I'm not selling one thing because I'm in good stock. But when we looked at the budget, or when we looked at pledge this year, we pledged the same thing. And because it's worked into our budget, and we worked our pledge into our budget. I know when I was head of finance here one time, that was what I found when I interviewed people. They actually, the givers, put it in their budget, and that's a suggestion when people are looking at their pledge. How much can you pledge, and how much can you budget?
Yeah, that's right. I think you're exactly right, Henry. Right, we want people to be thoughtful about their giving and things. And you kind of mentioned the current economic environment. And yeah, that's going to affect things too. And one of the things, even going back to that chart, one of the things I want to point out is like this is not our undergiving is not a current thing. This is a long-standing pattern at this church. It's been going on for years and years and years. Like, really, this church should be at least at the diocesan average in our socioeconomic area and the demographics we have. There are some rural churches. There are some churches that are focused on low-income individuals. And that's not this church. And so I think it's reasonable. It's a reasonable goal and expectation that our average is at the diocesan average in the Diocese of Texas. So that's something. This is a long-standing trend. It's not just something that's happened this past couple of years or because of the pandemic or because of the larger economic picture. It's a long-standing practice at this church that needs to be addressed. Yes?
What makes, how do you make more people, or not make them, how do you encourage a larger attendance of new people to have more pledges? I mean, it's great about the people that are here.
You know, we have lots of new people that show up and visit every week, right? That's just one of the good things that's going on here at Holy Comforter. I mean, every Sunday there are new people walking in. I'm visiting with them as I can, and had some visits this past week, I have some visits this week. But again, just continue to welcome them, include them. Again, another piece to kind of take that next step is getting involved in ministry. Like when somebody decides they want to be a part here, and we have some little problems here. It's not really clear how someone kind of goes and joins a ministry, and it's really hard for people to get involved. And so we're going to, I think when we, like I said, when we address some of those unity things and dynamics, that helps people feel more connected, and then they're more likely to give and to either start giving or increase what they are giving. Other questions or comments?
One more thought.
All right, Henry.
One of the things, I didn't finish budget, maybe, I don't have my glasses on, but anyway, in every business I ever ran, I had a line that said advertisement. And, you know, when I tell we had lunch with somebody on Thursday, and so they said, where do you go to church? They go to Big Baptist Church over in Champion. And so I told them, and they said, I've never heard of that. Now, this girl and I went to school together over 60 years ago. So, and she's never heard of Holy Comforter.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, you know, I'm
Trying to get our name out there.
I think that's a line.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's something, yeah, that would be a new thing, trying to get our name out there, marketing, things like that. It's something we can think about and consider kind of going forward. Any other questions or?
I just
Amber?
didn't know there was an assessment for the diocese, and it was like hefty. So I'm just trying to understand, like, is that for services they provide us, or what is?
Yeah, so, that's right. So every Episcopal church, every parish has to pay an assessment to the diocese. This is how the diocese runs, right? They use the money from the parish, ours is 30-something thousand, 32 or 33,000. It's based upon our revenue, is how that, there's a whole formula that it's calculated to calculate. So the services we get there is, you know, that's like funds the bishop, it funds the diocesan staff, and so when we need something or interacting with them, they can provide us expertise and things like that. So, but it's not necessarily a one-to-one correlation. You know, we're not paying for those services individually. Every church just gives in, and then the diocese does the things. So good question. Yes, Ed?
To reflect on that, to be aware, the assessments have gone down in the past several years from the diocese, so that number is significantly lower than it historically was, thanks to things the diocese has done to pay for clergy insurance and retirement and
Right.
stuff like that. So,
Right.
although the number seems high, it could be much higher.
It could be much higher. So every church pays, it's between 6 and 10% of revenue is what you have to pay, and that number, there's a big formula that gets filled out, and it depends on how much revenue you have, what you have to pay. So the larger churches in our diocese with more revenue pay, and their upper limit can be 10% of their budget. So, good question. All right, well, it's getting close to time for worship, and I need to go get ready for that. So if you have more questions or more thoughts about any of these, talk to a vestry member, talk to me. We'll continue to have conversations. Things will continue to happen this coming year, but thank you all for being here this morning. Thanks for being a part, and let's go worship.